Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is receiver. This is a little bit different from what we usually do because this was a game that was created in 7 days for a 7-day gaming challenge by Wolfire. Yes, you might know who Wolfire are, but some of you might not. Wolfire are currently in the process of making a game called Overgrowth. It's a fairly well-known game at the moment because they provided a metric ton of updates for their game in the form of videos on their channel, and they've gained quite the following. The guy very much explains his mindset during the development process and how things are developed, and it's really quite interesting. It's not a complete game yet, though. Not really even close, so you can expect coverage on Overgrowth once it actually gets into a state where it can be considered a game. I suppose the question is Receiver still considered a game? Well, it is. It's very much it's kind of an experiment. It's very much a test for certain ideas, and as a direct result, there are certain things, as you can see, that don't quite work the way they're supposed to work. But the notion of the game is that you have a gun, and you are attempting to collect tapes, and tapes will give you elements of the story, and you have to deal with the fact that there are robots and sentry turrets trying to kill you at every point. Now, the interesting thing about this game is that the gun itself can be manipulated in a lot of different ways. You notice you don't have an arm here. Now, I'm going to open up the help screen, and the reason I'm opening up the help screen is because this gun is actually quite complex. You start each playthrough with a different kind of gun. There's like, I've noticed 4 kinds of guns, I think, available in this game. And you can do a lot with it. You can manipulate the gun in a very interesting way. For instance, there I pulled back the slide, and what happened was the bullet that was chambered was actually dropped on the ground, which I can then pick up again, and the same thing happens. In fact, you know, I could empty the gun by just doing that over and over and over again, and the gun is now empty, as you can see. So I should probably take the magazine out. I can do that, and then I can manipulate the magazine individually. If I want, I could put it in my inventory. I can grab another magazine that actually has some rounds in it. I could actually put bullets in the magazine itself if I had any to put in the magazine. I believe I do, actually. So I think I've got to holster the weapon first, and then I can do something with the magazine, as you can see. So I can feed rounds into the magazine. Currently, I believe it's full. I can also pick up these rounds, which I dropped all over the floor here. Then I can draw my weapon, put the magazine into the gun itself, release the slide lock, and it's ready to fire. Interesting ideas going in right there. There's a couple of different weapons available in this game, including a revolver, which has different mechanics to this, which I think is a Colt 1911, from what I can tell. There's also a Glock, which has a fully automatic fire mode, which is quite interesting. The levels themselves are not so much randomly generated, but they're randomly put together. So the game consists of a bunch of different rooms. And then what you're going to do is every time you play it, because once you die, it ends the game immediately and then generates a new world, is you're going to go through the rooms in a different order. I'm just going to slightly adjust my mouse sensitivity because this is actually a bit of a problem with the game. It has a tendency of going a little bit ape from time to time. I'll put my flashlight away if I so desire. Now, there's other things I can... Uh-oh, that sounds like there's a turret around here somewhere. There's other things I can do with it. I could pull back the hammer. Obviously, the hammer is already pulled back at the moment. I could toggle my safety on and off. The help system on the side is kind of vital for learning the game because the game has a lot of buttons. Way more than you might expect. You can do things like pulling back the slide, releasing the slide lock, and so on and so forth. So I can hear beeps, so there's clearly a rope. Oh, there's the turret. Okay. Got to be really careful with how I deal with him. If I come in from the side, I might be able to do it. You die pretty much in one shot in this game, so that is going to end your gaming experience if you're not careful. There's also a turret there, which is even worse. So I'm going to try and maybe lean around this corner as best as I can, and then maybe I can take this turret out. Interestingly enough, the turrets also take damage in different ways. So if I were to disable a turret's weapon, it could still follow me around, but it can't shoot me. Now, I'm not sure if I've taken that one out or not, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move to the side here. And there we go. My gun is currently empty. I can't just hit R to reload. I've got to take the magazine out. I could load more rounds into the magazine if I holstered the weapon. That's probably not a terrible idea, so there we go. Let's load some in. I believe the capacity of this gun is 7 rounds to a magazine. Plus, of course, 1 in the chamber, potentially. What I could do is, if I wanted to optimize this, I could draw the weapon. I could put this into the magazine. Let's release the slide lock. That should chamber around. And then if I believe if I then take the magazine out again, and then equip the magazine, that's the flashlight, wrong button. There we go, equip the magazine, holster the weapon, I could then put an additional round in, and draw the weapon again, and then insert the magazine, and now suddenly I have 8 rounds available and not 7, because that's the way guns actually work. So, it's an interesting idea. But that's kind of what the game is, though. It's a set of ideas. It is a very fiddly... Oh, okay, that was... I thought I'd killed the turret. I guess I hadn't. I was trying to conserve ammunition. It didn't work out so well, so I'm instantly dead. The game is a set of ideas put together in 7 days to try and make a coherent game experience. And the question is, does it manage to do that? And surprisingly enough, the game really does become about the actual gun itself and handling the gun. And funnily enough, handling the gun and how awkward the gun is something that does enhance the tension. It's a little bit of an artificial way to do it, I suppose, but it does enhance the tension one way or the other. You can't really argue otherwise. Question is, does it make it any fun? Well, you know, that in itself is an entirely different matter. Alright, this should be loaded. There's probably a round in the chamber. It starts you in kind of a random state. This time around, it started me with the same gun again. What I'll probably do is die several times, then I can actually show you the different guns, because particularly the revolver is very, very interesting in that respect. Okay, this gun isn't actually firing by the looks of it. Have I got the safety on? I have the safety on. That would explain that. It's actually started the gun with that on. Uh-oh. This is still not working. Do I need to pull the hammer back? Let's pull back the slide. There's no round in the chamber. I guess there is now. Yeah, there we go. I forgot to cock the weapon. That would explain that. Now, the weapon also kicks back in a fairly realistic fashion. The gun physics also work pretty effectively. You can see how there's all the brass on the floor there. Let's eject the magazine. I don't think I have all that many bullets in my inventory, so I'm just going to throw that in there, and I'm going to equip my second magazine, and then insert that in, release the slide lock, and I think that should be ready to fire. Oh, wow. Did I empty the magazine already? I guess there was only a couple of bullets in that. Let's check. Yep, that is an empty magazine. This is not a good situation. I might not even be able to get past the first turret here. Better make sure that these 2 rounds count. Rather tense experience. Release the slide lock, ready to fire. Okay. Let's try and... Well, I hit it a couple of times, but then it killed me. So there you go. Well, so much for that notion. Same gun again. That's kind of unfortunate. I should probably go and kill myself so that I can try a couple of different weapons. Shouldn't be too difficult. There's probably going to be something around this corner that murders me anyway. No, maybe not. Maybe not. It's an interesting experiment, I suppose, in terms of how complex can you make gun physics while still keeping the game enjoyable. Is this a fun experience? It kind of is, but it's also something of a novelty. As in, would these gun mechanics actually be any fun whatsoever in a regular shooter? Chances are, probably not, unfortunately. It mostly is just because of how sodding fiddly the thing is. It takes quite a bit of practice to really get used to it. I suppose for some people that's going to be pretty appealing, but I think it should be blindingly obvious to even the most elitist of people why exactly you design a game in such a way that you press R to reload and then everything else is managed for you. The notion of just having bullets automatically refill, even though that's actually not the case in real life, that you have to actually load the magazine every time, and if you throw away a magazine, then you're just going to lose all of those bullets. Now, in normal shooters, there are some shooters where there's an exception, but in normal shooters, what happens is you refill from this kind of common pool of ammunition, and even if you fire 2 rounds from a 30-round magazine and then reload, you haven't suddenly lost those rounds, and you don't have the clips. Oh god, I keep saying clips, and that's bad. Don't do that. Gun nuts will kill me for that. That's really dumb. The magazines don't actually persist with the number of bullets that were in them previously. There are some games that actually do simulate that, though. Don't get me wrong, but most games have elected not to do that. And the reason they usually do that, of course... Wow, I actually think that bullet went through that and hit the chair. That's pretty cool. The reason that most games elect to do it is simply because it streamlines the game experience to the point where it's more enjoyable. And this, I think, is a very extreme example of taking authenticity and realism to the point where it wouldn't really work inside a normal game environment. You would have to kind of design a game entirely around the notion that the gun is going to be simulated in a really major way. A lot of the simulation is also kind of pointless, as far as I can tell. Do you need to pull back the hammer on any of these guns? Probably not. Do you really need to utilize the safety? I mean, what use is the safety, really? I can't shoot myself, as far as I'm aware. That's something that would be interesting to see if there were other people in the game, or if it was possible to actually shoot yourself in the foot, then, yeah, having the safety on would kind of make sense. Especially if you were to jolt and then your gun were to randomly go off. But I don't think the game really wants that randomness to it. It wants the simulation. So it's a little bit tricky, isn't it? The idea of the game is really solid. I mean, I'm definitely not criticizing them for it. It's cool that this is a really cool idea that was developed over 7 days. There's also a couple of other interesting things, like you tap W repeatedly to sprint. So you can actually kind of... I guess you can't do that with your gun out. That would make sense. Ah, nice. A flashlight, there we go. If I holster my weapon, will that work? Yeah, there you go. So yeah, sprinting is not actually possible with your gun out, so basically you keep kind of tapping W and you can move a little. I think I just broke my neck. I guess I shouldn't be running up and down stairs, you know, when your family told you to do that, they weren't kidding. Ah, so this is another one of the guns. This is the Glock. And we can... I'm just going to bring up the help menu again. It's just, I keep forgetting all the keys. It's been a long time since I played something like X-Wing vs. TIE Fighter where I had to remember 30 or 40 different buttons. I guess that's just the way of it. I can release the slide lock here. Does this thing actually have a magazine in it? It does. There we go. We can have a look at the magazine. It's got a reasonable number of rounds in it, not all that many. I could probably load a few more into it. There we go. I've only got a couple of extra rounds, but that should do the job. And then we can insert the magazine. I believe this is ready to fire. Yes, it is. Now, this has a full auto mode. You'll notice the little switch at the top there is actually individually manipulated, which is really quite nice. Pull back the slide, which ejects around just to check, hey, you know, what's going on with that. It's actually kind of satisfying to be able to manipulate the weapon in such a detailed way. I guess there's a certain amount of enthusiasm when it comes to how firearms work, and there's a certain elegance in the design of a lot of firearms. Firearms are, for the most part, you know, quite simple pieces of machinery, but they can get surprisingly complex. And plus, you know, the way that they work, I guess it's... you could appreciate them as sort of a thing of beauty in that regard, as weird as it sounds. Like, people that get really excited over how cars and engines work, for instance, it's really kind of nice, you know. People like mechanics. It's as simple as that. I don't know how many rounds I've got left in the chamber. Not that many. Let's... oh, drop the magazine. Let's grab that again, and we can put it back in. Do I have any more bullets? I don't think so. Equip the magazine... insert the magazine. Let's turn full auto off. There we go. So I've got maybe 3 rounds left by the looks of it. But it's a really interesting experiment. Now, if you want to get hold of the game, it does cost $5. As a game, I don't think it's necessarily particularly good, but that's really not what they were aiming for, was it, when it came down to making a game like this? They wanted to try something new in 7 days and see if they could execute it. And as a result of that very short time frame, they had to cut back on a lot of things like texturing. There's barely any of it, for instance. That reminds me very much of SimCity, not SimCity, sorry, Deus Ex in the side there. That's almost like the Deus Ex background. Maybe it is even. And it's probably not something that you'll have fun with for more than half an hour. I mean, I like the fact that they... God damn it! They did that random generation. That does make it a little bit more interesting. Every time you die, you're spawning in a different place with different equipment. It's giving me the 1911 back there. And that's kind of cool. Would I be interested in seeing them develop this into a full game? I don't know. I mean, I would be intrigued by the notion of having more than 3 guns in the game and having to individually manipulate the different parts of an assault rifle, a submachine gun, an LMG, for instance, something that's belt-fed, something that's drum-fed, a shotgun, a pump shotgun, semi-auto shotgun, all sorts of cool ideas there, potentially. There we go, this looks like it's loaded. Check how many rounds are in it, not too many. Load a few more. It's curiously compelling, I've got to admit that. But I think it's just because it's so unique. I think that if you were to use these mechanics in a traditional shooter, it just wouldn't work. And that's actually fine, because we're not necessarily looking for a traditional shooter in this case. But it's nice to compare this and the detail and the authenticity that's been put in here to your average shooter, because I think it gives you a very interesting perspective on game design and the corners that actually have to be cut in order to make an interesting and playable game for a large number of people. It's a pretty intriguing notion. And as an experiment, I think they've done a pretty bang-up job here. Also got some kind of cool music going on with it, and I have no bullets left. Oh dear. This is bad news. Alright, leg it. No, not that way. Jackass, stuck in the terrain and dead. There we go. Shape's not spawning with the revolver. I would actually really like to show you that. Thank you, game. Very much appreciated. Just before I go, let me show you the revolver. So with this case, you can open the chamber, you can insert rounds into the chamber. Close the chamber, you can extract your casings as well. It's not starting with any bullets here. Wow, it's being extremely mean. Also, pick up stuff nearby. It looks like there was a couple of bullets around there. There we go. Extract the casings. There we go. You have to do it a couple of times in order to get rid of all of them, it would seem. Pick all of those up. Reload it. There we go. Close the cylinder, and it's pretty much ready to fire. I don't think you have to pull back the hammer in order for this to actually work. So I could also spin the cylinder with the mouse wheel, apparently. Although it's not actually showing me do that. Maybe I have to open the cylinder first before I spin it. There we go. That's pretty cool, because if you don't have enough bullets, you can actually rotate it to make sure that the next shot you take isn't going to just click, which is kind of neat. So they've got a nice level of simulation here. I have to wonder just how far you would really go in order to gain authenticity while still making an interesting game. Because I don't think you can simulate to this level in a regular title. I don't know if you'd even want to. There we go. Extract the casings. Put in my last round. There we go. And I have 3. Not exactly good. I can't remember which one I have to do in order for it to fire. I guess it's going to be the one nearest the top, you know, common sense. Close the cylinder. There we go. I think maybe there's some room for some of this in video games. Obviously, one of the biggest problems you're going to have is the fact that there's just too many buttons for this to work on, say, a console. So you'd have to make it PC specific. Oh, I guess I was completely wrong with where I put the bullet. There we go. There's nothing left in this. I guess I'm just going to have to make a running jump. Oh, did I disable it? I guess I disabled its gun. Nice. Sure, there's no bullets around here for me. Oh, there are. Excellent. Sweet. I have to wonder what you would do. Maybe make reloading slightly more complex. Obviously, simulate the notion of rounds kind of being persistent and not in this giant common pool that's there for no reason at all. And some games already do that, so I guess it's not really all that original, but it's a neat little experience, a neat little experiment as well. I appreciate what they've done here. I think they should do more interesting things. Thankfully, that's exactly what they do. If you look at Wolfire's back catalog, that's pretty much all they make, so there you go. Alright, folks, Receiver. If you want to play around with this, you can get it up from the website for about $5. As I say, it's not exactly a particularly deep game experience. It was designed in about 7 days, so you very much have my caution on that. But it's unique. It's a very interesting experiment in terms of taking game mechanics to perhaps a logical extreme and seeing whether or not they could actually be integrated, or indeed whether or not you could build an entire game around them. And in this case, the answer is, to some degree, yes, you can. Admittedly, you're probably not going to find mass appeal with it, but that's never what you're looking for when you do a 7-day game challenge. My name's been TotalBiscuit, taking a look at Receiver. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.